Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're bringing you a brand new historical explainer, and this one dives into a story of just absolutely unprecedented power and really profound wisdom. We are going to be exploring the life of Prophet Suleiman, who you might also know as Solomon, peace be upon him. He was the son of Prophet Dawood, and both of them were granted prophethood by Allah. But the thing about Suleiman is that he was given a kingdom that was just completely unlike anything else in human history. I mean, we're talking about a level of authority that didn't just stop at human borders. It crossed right over into the realms of nature, the animal kingdom, and even the unseen. It is a totally breathtaking narrative drawn straight from historical sources, and it's going to really help us grasp the sheer magnitude of his reign. So let's just get right into it.
Okay, so just imagine for a second. What if you actually possessed absolute control over the forces of nature? Think about it. What if the wind literally carried you, the animals spoke directly to you, and the unseen beings known as jinn obeyed your every single command? Well, according to the sources, Prophet Suleiman actually asked Allah for something this extraordinary. He made a prayer saying, "O Allah, grant me a kingdom that will not belong to anyone after me." And amazingly enough, that prayer was answered. Allah granted him a kingdom so vast and so uniquely powerful that it literally remains completely unmatched to this very day. This wasn't just some standard political empire, you know. It was a miraculous dominion over creation itself.
Right, so how did this insane amount of power actually play out? Well, first off, he was given control over the wind. The wind would gently carry him wherever he needed to go, which meant a grueling, month-long journey could be turned into a trip that took mere minutes. Pretty incredible, right? Second, he was granted authority over the jinn. These were incredibly powerful beings, and they were put to work building these towering, magnificent structures. Some of them even dived deep into the oceans to extract precious gems and pearls for the kingdom. And if any of those jinn decided to rebel or cause mischief, well, Suleiman had the power to bind them in chains and imprison them. And finally, one of his most distinct, almost unbelievable miracles was the ability to understand and actually speak the languages of animals and birds. It's just this mind-blowing portfolio of power. But that really begs the question, how does a human being handle that much authority without it going to their head?
Section 1. Wisdom and the Animals. A test of humility.
Now, you'd probably think that having all this absolute power would lead straight to arrogance, right? But for Prophet Suleiman, it was the exact opposite. His massive kingdom really only showcased his profound wisdom, his deep humility, and his absolute gratitude to the Creator. There is this beautiful little anecdote that captures this perfectly. One day, Suleiman was marching with his massive army, and we're talking about a legion made up of humans, jinn, and birds. As they were approaching what's known as the Valley of Ants, a tiny little ant saw this awe-inspiring force coming. She actually called out to her colony, warning them, "Hurry to your homes, lest Suleiman and his army crush you without realizing." And because of his miraculous gift, Suleiman actually heard and understood this tiny creature. He didn't feel insulted, he wasn't arrogant about it. Instead, he just smiled and laughed. He immediately turned to Allah in prayer, thanking him for all these immense blessings, and just asked for the ability to keep doing good deeds. It's such a powerful reminder that true greatness is always paired with immense gratitude.
And you know, this perfectly sets up his incredible judicial wisdom too. Take the famous story of the two mothers who came to Prophet Dawood with a really intense dispute. Basically, a wolf had eaten the older woman's child, so she deceitfully snatched the younger woman's baby and claimed it was hers. Now, because the baby was physically in the older woman's possession, Prophet Dawood initially ruled in her favor. But Suleiman asked for permission to judge the case himself. He took the baby, actually drew a sword, and declared he would just cut the child perfectly in half so both women could have an equal share. The older woman, who obviously had no real biological bond to the child, agreed to this horrific solution. But the younger woman, driven by this desperate maternal mercy, screamed out. She begged him to keep the baby alive and just let the older woman have it. And boom, right then and there, Suleiman knew the truth. A real mother could never bear to see her child harmed. He handed the baby right back to its true mother. It was just a flawless psychological test.
Section 2. The Queen of Saba and the Hoopoe. A test of faith.
So, among the birds in Suleiman's massive army was the hoopoe, or the hudhud. This specific bird had a very important job. It could actually detect underground water in dry lands, which the jinn would then extract. But one day, Suleiman noticed the hoopoe was missing and threatened to punish it if it didn't come back with a really good excuse. Well, when the bird finally returned, it brought some pretty shocking news, which kicked off a rapid chain of events. The bird reported finding an entire nation ruled by a woman, Queen Bilqis. She had this magnificent throne, but the catch was, she and her people worshipped the sun instead of Allah.
So Suleiman immediately sends the Hoopoe right back with a letter demanding she stop being arrogant and submit to Allah. Now the queen's military advisors, they totally wanted war, but she was cunning. She decided to test him by sending these lavish bribes, basically trying to figure out if he was just some greedy worldly king or a true prophet. When her emissaries showed up with all this wealth, Suleiman was furious. He completely rejected the gifts, making it clear that what Allah had given him was far superior, and he threatened to send an unstoppable army if she didn't submit. Terrified, the emissaries reported back, and the queen decided she better travel to him in person.
Now, knowing she was on her way, Suleiman turns to his court and asks a pretty wild question. Who could bring her magnificent throne to him before she even arrived? A powerful jinni volunteers, saying he could bring it before Suleiman even stood up from his seat. But then, a man who possessed knowledge from the book spoke up and made this absolutely astonishing claim. He said, "Before you even blink your eye, I will bring her throne to you." And instantly, in the blink of an eye, the grand throne materialized right there in front of Suleiman. Now, did he boast about this? Not at all. He immediately praised Allah, recognizing this massive miracle as a test from his Lord to see if he would be grateful or ungrateful.
So when Queen Bilqis finally arrives, Suleiman decides to test her. He actually has her throne disguised. When he asks if it's hers, she cautiously replies, "It looks like it." Then Suleiman leads her into this breathtakingly massive palace built entirely of glass by the jinn, and her whole worldview was about to be completely shattered. You see, the glass floor was built directly over flowing water. Thinking she was stepping into an actual stream, she lifts her dress to avoid getting her clothes wet. When she realized her mistake, she was deeply embarrassed. She had been completely deceived by her own senses. The sheer magnitude of this glass palace, the cleverly disguised throne, and that crazy teleportation made her realize that Suleiman was definitely not just a king. He was a true prophet of God. She realized that just as the glass was an illusion of water, the sun she worshipped was absolutely nothing compared to the creator of the sun. Right in that moment, she and her entire nation abandoned sun worship and submitted entirely to Allah.
Section 3. Construction and Devotion. Rebuilding Al-Aqsa.
Prophet Suleiman actually channeled his absolute power into some truly incredible architectural achievements, completely blending heavy construction with deep religious devotion. One of his most monumental acts was overseeing the rebuilding of Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. Now, to really put the significance of this architectural endeavor into perspective, we have to talk about the number 500 and the spiritual reward attached to it. According to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, a single prayer in the Grand Mosque in Mecca is worth 100,000 prayers. A prayer in the Prophet's Mosque in Medina is worth 1,000, and a single prayer in Masjid al-Aqsa, the very mosque constructed under Prophet Suleiman's command, is equivalent to 500 regular prayers. So all of that intense labor from the jinn was actually directed toward building a sanctuary of immense, lasting spiritual weight. And upon completing the construction of this sacred mosque, Prophet Suleiman actually made 3 very specific supplications to Allah. First, he asked for a rule that perfectly matched Allah's justice, a place where fairness reigned and oppression just didn't exist. Second, he asked for that completely unmatched kingdom we've been talking about this whole time, and Allah granted both of these to him immediately. But his third prayer is truly beautiful. He asked that anyone who leaves their home with the sole intention of praying in Masjid al-Aqsa would be completely purified of their sins, returning as sinless as the day they were born. And the historical sources actually note that Prophet Muhammad expressed his deep hope that this third prayer would be granted and extended all the way to our generation today.
Section 4. The final lesson. Escaping mortality.
So, Prophet Suleiman lived for 150 years. He ruled over humanity, he commanded the animals, he directed the wind, and he controlled the incredibly powerful jinn. Yet despite having a kingdom that stretched the very limits of our imagination, there was one reality he simply couldn't command: mortality. To really understand his final miracle, we kind of have to look at the cultural context of that era, specifically this concept of ilm al-ghaib, or the knowledge of the unseen. Back during Suleiman's time, society was heavily plagued by dark practices and black magic. The people held this massive, widespread misconception. They falsely believed that the jinn actually possessed ilm al-ghaib, meaning they thought the jinn could see the future and knew all the unseen secrets of the universe. Well, Allah wanted to permanently shatter this false belief, and he used the very death of Prophet Suleiman to do it.
Let's see how this all builds up to a really incredible climax. One day, Suleiman was strictly supervising the jinn as they labored heavily on constructing the sacred sanctuary. He was leaning really heavily on his wooden staff, just watching them intently. And right there, in that exact position, Allah took his soul. His eyes remained perfectly open. Because the jinn were utterly terrified of him, they just kept their heads down and continued their grueling labor, totally assuming he was still alive and watching their every move. The jinn just toiled away in absolute fear. They had literally no idea he was dead. It actually wasn't until termites slowly ate away at the inside of his wooden staff that it finally snapped. Prophet Suleiman's body fell to the ground. And it was only then that the jinn and all the people watching realized he had been dead for a very long time. It was a profound humiliation for the jinn. It proved, once and for all, that they were just creations. They had absolutely no knowledge of the unseen.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to ponder. If the man who controlled the wind, spoke to the animals, and commanded the supernatural couldn't escape mortality, and if those terrifyingly powerful jinn couldn't even see that a man had been dead right in front of them, well, where should we truly be placing our faith? The story of Prophet Suleiman teaches us that absolute power belongs entirely to the Creator. The limits of what's possible are really only boundaries in our own minds, but true devotion, gratitude, and worship, that belongs only to Allah.